over 2,000. That's way above the long-term trends. And just to say, I wouldn't be surprised if a high proportion of that was related to the university. And a lot of that, because it's 2020 based, won't be in the 2018 based projections because that was absolutely fixed in 2018. So we're just trying to make the point. The international migration is very high in York, and it's been shown to be very high in the mid-year estimates. And the latest years aren't factored into the 2018 based projections, even the variant one that the council's used. And again, that points to an increase in the student population, which isn't factored in, amongst other points.
Mr. Corsia.
Sir, it's well, unfortunately, I don't have that table in front of me, but of course, the international migration, what the ONS has done, sir, is they've used a 5-year average for international migration. And so I think a lot of these figures for students and student growth, you have to remember, and probably, I think for most of us who know York very well, we take it as a matter of everybody knows it, sir, but of course, since 2011, the university has been developing a second campus. And that has actually led to a substantial increase of international students moving in. And indeed, that's why the job numbers have grown so substantially over that period. Now that campus is almost complete now. And that has just been reflected in these figures. So I don't think you can take one, I don't think 1 year's figures really tell you very much, to be perfectly honest. As I say, the ONS, and I fully accept these are variant projections, sir. So that's the second point. These variant projections are used by the NHS, but the PPG tells you not to use, you shouldn't use them unless you have distinct, good local evidence to do so. And so my main point is with the council, sir, and I'm telling you that sort of their evidence-based, sir, and that's what you are here to consider at the end of the day. Their evidence-based doesn't provide you with any evidence of those local factors.
Thank you, Mr. Corsia.
Well, I'm grateful to Mr. Robinson for responding on my behalf, but other than being cheeky to him, he's absolutely right. The position on the 10-year migration figures, that is to say, using the earlier methodology rather than the 2018 methodology as set out in the update. And if I might correct Mr. Corsia, of course, this is all used as a sense check against the employment-based approach. And I've said all I'm going to say about that, or all I need to say, I hope, unless you've got any further questions. We have not applied that directly, as you know.
It appears to me that we may well have covered, with the exception of Mr. Keogh, wanted to just add to it, but otherwise we may well have covered issues 2.1 through to 2.3 inclusive. Okay, I have a few people wanting to join in now. Okay. Mr. Keogh, first of all, just on the basis that I saw your name first.
Thank you, sir. Just a few points in response to Mr. Corsier's statements. Firstly, in terms of the university, he seems to be accepting the growth that's occurred to this point in time, but then seems to be dismissing future growth as aspirational. So you've seen the evidence from the university on Matter 3, which Mrs. O'Neill represented yesterday. Just to put you in light of some figures, so between 2013 and 2022, the full-time staff numbers at the University of York increased from 3,106 to 4,443. That's 1,337 staff increase, or a 43% increase in staff numbers in that 9-year period. And sir, I don't want to preempt the statement of common ground, but I think what you'll be hearing and what you heard yesterday is that the university plans to continue that growth. It's not going to stop. That's the first point, just a general point in response to Mr. Corsier's comments that the university's plans are aspirational. They're far from it. There's a lot of very concrete plans in place. The second point in relation to the military moving wholesale out of York, well, recent events may put some revision to that. We don't know. In any event, Imphal Barracks is not due to be vacated for another number of years until the end of this decade. And the housing numbers in Imphal Barracks don't start appearing in the supply until 2032. So there's a bit of uncertainty around that statement that the Army are going to move wholesale out of York. And sir, as you said, we'd covered matters 2.1 to 2.3. There was one further point I wanted to make on the 2.3. You'll see in my response to 2.3, it goes back to the affordable housing point. I was going to make it later, but if we're covering it now. So the affordable housing in our representations on the 2021 modifications, paragraph 2.15 to paragraph 2.22 of our 2021 representations, I covered the issue of affordable housing supply, both gross and net. And so what you can see from the council's figures is that there's been an almost, frankly, catastrophic collapse in affordable housing delivery in this city between 2013 and 2014. And sorry, between 2013 to 2019, there were just 461 affordable housing completions. That's less than 10% of all completions. However, and this was made at the Phase 1 hearings, when you add in right-to-buy sales of 384 units over the same period, the net change in affordable housing stock was only 77 dwellings. So the 10% allowance that Mr. Robinson was suggesting, I would suggest to you, sir, as an uplift for affordable housing supply is quite a conservative uplift to allow in light of those figures. And obviously, this goes nowhere near meeting the government's requirement within the NPPF to boost significantly the supply of housing. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Pavlovich.
Thank you, sir, and I do apologise for the cough. I think I must be allergic to something in this room because I just went for a walk and I stopped coughing. Either that or it's all of you making me nervous. But one other factor I feel that hasn't been taken into account adequately is the nature of the housing market, and that has seen a significant change in recent years, and that's been the increase in short-term lets and Airbnb. We did some research recently which showed that just on Airbnb alone, there were 1,781 adverts for lettings, of which 1,500 were for whole house lettings. Now that does skew the private rented sector. And the more of the private rented sector that we lose to short-term lettings, the less availability there is for people in York across a whole range of economic occupations and salaries. So it just adds to the pressure of affordability within the city, and we've seen that reflected in the rise in the increase in rents.
Mrs. Harding.
Thank you. I also wanted to talk about the affordable housing, and I wanted to go back to a point that was raised earlier about paragraph 29 of the PPG and that final sentence in relation to the increase in the total housing figures. And basically, I just wanted to highlight again, I don't think the council were necessarily disagreeing with Mr. Robinson's suggestion of a 10% increase. But what I just wanted to point out is that this paragraph 29 isn't suggesting that it only applies to those demographic figures or to those market signals. It could equally apply to that economic-led development scenario. And so in this particular situation, if we are all agreeing that there is a need for an uplift in relation to the affordable housing need, as was being pointed out, that 573 dwellings, those households that are in need across the area, and the potential for those people to not have a home, that is a real need that needs to be addressed. That increase could be included on top of the economic-led approach, and therefore could be included on top of that 822 that's currently proposed, or on top of the 790 in the original economic-led approach. I just wanted to reiterate that because I'm not sure that it was really taken on board after the point was raised before by Mr. Austin Fell.
Point not taken on board by who?
Sorry, but by the council, just in terms of their lack of response to Mr. Austin Fell, it wasn't really clear that whether they had taken on board that paragraph 29 could apply to any of the scenarios.
So, which paragraph are we talking about? 22?
It's a paragraph, I think it's 29 of the PPG. The point about...
yes, sorry, yes, I've got the wrong number.
Yeah.
That's an adjustment to apply to the starting point, which is the ONS figure, not to the employment figure. You have to read.
I'm sorry, it is clearly not.
Let me finish, please. I don't agree with you, and you'll have to let me disagree with you, I'm afraid. If you have to read the suite of the PPG provisions together to see how it fits together. And we say that is the position, and in any event, you have to remember that the PPG says that you can't always meet simply the unmet housing requirement for affordable housing, because otherwise you may lead, as others have agreed, to a position which is unsustainable.
I'm sorry, I don't think that's what paragraph 29 says at all. I think it is quite clear that total affordable housing need, and it's in relation to the total housing figures in the local plan. I really don't think that's in relation to the demographic need. I think that's a misinterpretation by the council.
That's fine. I don't expect people to leave the room in agreement.
But can I just be clear about what you're suggesting? That you might apply a 10% uplift to the 790 figure to cater for an additional amount of affordable housing. Is that, have I got that right?
Sorry, The 10% isn't my figure, obviously. It was Mr Robinson's. I was purely suggesting that there needs to be an uplift to address the affordable housing need, as is set out in relation to paragraph 29. I've picked up on the 10% because Mr Robinson raised it. The council didn't appear to disagree with the idea that there was a 10% uplift and that would be appropriate. It's providing some uplift to address affordable housing need, not necessarily all of the housing need. So I'm just pointing out there isn't a reason why that 10% couldn't be added to the economic approach that they're suggesting they are following.
As long as I'm understanding, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mr Natkus.
Thank you. I was going to make a similar point on the affordable, but just to add on to what Mr Keogh said from what's in our statement, that just shows the problem of affordable homes in York, is actually when you look at the right to buys over some of the individual years, at the end of 2019, there was actually 7 less affordable homes than 2 years earlier at the start of 2017. Now, I think that's probably going to be unprecedented anywhere in the country where an authority goes over a 2-year period and ends up with less affordable homes than when they started. So I think it is an absolute crisis in the area, and it is something that needs to be looked at and could be added on in the way that Ms Harding's just mentioned. And the other point was just a quick clarification. I think a number of us were scrambling for a quick look to see if Selby's plan had come out for consultation, because at the moment there isn't a planned new settlement for 4,000 homes at Esquick just outside the border. So with regard to Mr Corse's comments about migration, that settlement hasn't been brought forward or proposed as yet.
Mr Secker.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to make a general point in support of the need for higher overall housing number in York. Speaking on behalf of the business community, we hear from our members about the struggle to recruit, and I would endorse the comments earlier from Councillor Pavlovic in that regard, and that businesses looking to either relocate to York are put off by the thought about where they're going to find the workforce, or indeed businesses within York choosing to move elsewhere when they look to expand because of that lack of workforce as well as employment land. But I appreciate that was an issue dealt with elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anyone else on issues 2.1 to 2.3? Okay, very good. In which case, then it seems to me this would be a good point at which to break for lunch and deal with the requirements afterwards. Or are you wanting to go all the way, Mr.
No, but as I said, I think we've probably covered the requirement as well.
Pardon?
I think we probably covered most of the issues on the requirement. I think there's the shortfall issue and, sorry, I just lost the MIQs. Thank you.
Well, I'll put it this way. Does anyone have an awful lot to say in relation to 2.4 to 2.6? This is the requirement as opposed to just the OAN. Do you have quite a bit of ground to cover, Mr. Corsier? I'm just trying to gauge whether or not to have a break now, basically, or whether we're going to deal with it all now.
I think it will take longer than 10 minutes, sir.
Okay. On that basis, I'll trust you. And I'll take a break now then, I think. Okay, it's 12:50. I now adjourn the hearing to resume at, what did we say? At 1:45. Thank you.